one of the stories that you raised that you're quite interested in is Sportradar coming into an agreement to acquire IMG Arena from Endeavour, which is having its own $13 billion deal elsewhere. But this one's quite interesting in the sense of, this deal is not quite worth $13 billion, but it is a relationship with IMG Arena's portfolio, which if stats tell me correctly, they've got relations with over 70 rights holders. They cover approximately 39,000 official data events through 30,000 streaming events across 14 global sports. Wimbledon, US Open, Roland Garros, MLS, EuroLeague basketball, some PGA Tour. There's quite a bit in there, Nick. And there's several layers with which we're going to go into this, but just why initially did this story stick out to you?
Well, it stood out, I think, to everyone for a couple of reasons. And in fact, it took me a little while to realize I had to do a double take or a triple take when I first saw the headline. And the headline is that Sportradar are being paid to take the IMG Arena business. They're being paid about $125 million for the business, and then another $100 million for some of the rights commitments. That is, you've got to think about that. So they're getting paid to take these rights, and that's caught a lot of people off guard. Like, wow, we thought the betting industry was booming. All of a sudden, this company is now shutting down or handing over its basically business to the leading player in the market. Has the bubble burst? And look, I think that's a bit of an overreaction here. There's a few things going on, right? So taking a step back, what is IMG Arena first? But IMG Arena is one of those businesses that sits alongside what Sportradar and Genius Sports have basically been built on, and to some extent Perform, which is a lot to do with the betting industry, betting rights, data rights, and also some broadcast rights explicitly for betting platforms. So for context, they would mainly be selling things like betting simulcasts. So basically that would incorporate a much smaller screen size. It would be basically that the rights owner would have a carved out set of rights, which would be so carved out that the broadcasters who are doing the main deals would not be too worried about how carved out this would be. To give you to put some perspective or to explain that better, is they would have, say, the live stream. It would be a low latency broadcast. There would be a restriction on the bit rate, so the quality of the broadcast. There would be a restriction on the screen size of that broadcast, and there would be other constraints, basically to ensure that the quality of what was being broadcast on these betting platforms would never really push anyone who wants to watch the live experience just organically from, say, a traditional broadcaster into a betting space. But this little niche became quite lucrative. They also basically had effectively a trading platform they created. So that's basically what Sportradar, Genius Sports, and companies like IMG Arena do, is they basically power the bulk of the betting platforms in the world. So some of them you'll see, they are just, when you see these platforms in various different markets, all they are, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes they are just built on they're white labeled, and they could be marketed by anyone. Anyone wants to launch a platform, if they get the license, they could be launched, and it's just going to be powered by one of these organizations' engines. Now, the complex bit, and the reason this sale has sort of had to happen, is the value of those rights became more and more lucrative, right? As betting grew, you started to see the fight for some of the rights to these betting simulcasts, and maybe even the rights to have all the data and all the betting options available became quite lucrative and quite competitive. So these organizations were bidding for each other. We started to see in the US a couple of situations where the NFL and I think the NBA and maybe even MLB got equity stakes in some of those partnerships in those data betting providers. So for someone like IMG Arena, who's grown quite successfully, from what I understand, was quite profitable for a while, they had to make some bets to continue to grow, make some commitments on some rights deals, and maybe some of those rights deals were paying too much of a premium, weren't able to get some of those returns, put a bit of pressure on, and the business grew at a pretty incredible rate, right? So they grew the business really big. But the market got competitive. So basically, what am I trying to get to here? I'm trying to get to so why all this has happened. So fast forward to now, they're still turning over a lot of revenue, but behind the scenes, they were acquired, or they're a part of the Endeavour business. And you pointed out before that Endeavour, $13 billion valuation. People who have followed the Endeavour business, that's where IMG was part of that. That's Ari Emanuel. There's a modeling business. There's an agency business. There's the Endeavour streaming business. There's all sorts of other pieces of this. They basically, how would I describe it? They basically like put all these together, acted almost like a bit of a VC, putting all these businesses together and built a super sports business, right? With all these different acquisitions they've got. And one of the parts they bought was IMG Arena to really go after the betting spot, and OpenBet, which was basically another platform-based offering in this market. So bear with me, I'm getting there. So Endeavour now are up for sale. They basically, I think, have been sold, gone private to Silverlake for that valuation of $13 billion. But for those parts of the business that aren't as say profitable, as additive to perhaps the bottom line, or might be a bit complex, the ones that aren't adding value to that $13 billion valuation, they basically, from what I understand, again, someone might sense check me here, but from what I understand, they've been siloed. They've basically been kept to the side because they're not adding value to that major valuation. And so that valuation, that $13 billion business is being sold as it is. And there's all the other parts, which are quite lucrative, quite valuable parts to the business, your open bets, your IMG arenas. There's probably other parts of the business that I'm missing. There's Endeavour streaming will be part of that. All those other parts, they aren't essential to that $13 billion valuation, and so will be probably quickly moved on and sold off to clear the decks, basically, for the original owners. And that's probably why basically IMG Arena sale happened as quickly as it did. They decided when they need to get that off the books, there's probably some consolidation that needs to happen, and it looks like they decided to get rid of those rights. There's a huge liability on rights, and that's why the money's going the other way a little bit. There's a commitment there that's been made. But inevitably, Sportradar, who's now the ownership, will probably have to do some serious consolidation. That could be people basically letting go a lot of people, could be technology issues, whatever. And that money is going to help probably pay off some of those costs that are coming their way. And basically, they take on the liability of that. So it's a long way to get to the point.